Welcome back. It was called Hitler's Final Solution to Europe's, well, what he thought was the Jewish problem. Tried to murder them all. And as Nazi Germany ravaged Europe, he almost achieved his goal. When World War II ended in May of 1945, more than 8 million Jews, two-thirds of all the Jews in Europe, had been murdered. They were either gassed or worked to death in concentration camps. It was 75 years ago today that the Soviet army arrived at the gates of Auschwitz, one of the 40 most notorious of the camps. Of the 1.3 million people sent there, 1.1 million died. Of them, over 900,000 were Jews. Today, the world took pause to remember them all, those who were perished at Auschwitz and in the Holocaust overall. Joining me now to reflect and honor their memory is Rabbi Mark Wildes, founder and director of the Manhattan Jewish Experience, and Marlene Yahalom from the American Society for Yad Vashem. Welcome to you both. What are your thoughts today?
It's an important day for the world to take pause and to think about hate and the results of hate and what happens when good people also remain silent. The Holocaust happened not only because of what the Nazis did, but it was allowed to happen by good people who kept quiet.
Marlene, we are very sadly seeing an indisputable rise in anti-Semitic violence here in America. Why is that happening, in your opinion?
I think it's a signal that we haven't learned enough from the lessons of the past, and education needs to be encouraged and sustained to teach the present and future generations how to be aware of signs of anti-Semitism and try and prevent it.
You know, a mantra coming out of the Holocaust, never again, never again. It was a theme, you know, but over and over again, we have seen mass murder. We've seen genocide, the killing fields of Southeast Asia. Never again was, I'm surprised it has happened again. Are you, Mark?
I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. We thought maybe with social media, now we know so much more as it's happening in real time. But it takes people of courage to stand up and to oppose it. Just because we know something is happening, people always used to say that about the Shoah, about the Holocaust, if we only knew earlier, if we only knew earlier. Well, today we know. We know when genocide is taking place, and we are fighting in the United Nations, and we are on some level impotent to stop it, because we need to act and not simply be aware.
By the way, the Holocaust, you're both personally affected by what happened in the Holocaust, your ancestors.
Yes, all four of my grandparents went through the Holocaust and survived. Two were hidden in Belgium. Two went through Auschwitz-Birkenau and survived. My father was a hidden child in Belgium and then joined the Belgian resistance, and my mother was in forced labor camps.
And they all survived.
And they all survived.
You know, books have been written. Viktor Frankl wrote a famous one about those who, what was it about them? How did they emerge?
Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning. What was your question?
No, I guess you're all four survived.
Yes.
And I'm curious, what was it about them?
I think they were very lucky. They were very, very lucky, and they all had a situation of also the kindness of strangers, that they ran into people that had the moral courage to help them at one point, and that made a very big difference.
And sir, you lost ancestors?
Well, we were a little luckier, if you will. My mother's side all came from Germany. They were there for centuries, and they had a premonition. My grandfather, blessed memory, after whom I'm named, was told by his chauffeur, his very dear friend, someone who was not Jewish, to get out. And he took that opportunity, and they went to Switzerland, lived there for a few years until they could get affidavits to come to the United States. But I wanted to say something which I think is just so key in remembering what was happening and what we need to do about this today. It's not just education. I think a lot of people know about what happened. It's a question of, as I mentioned earlier, standing up. And when you hear something anti-Semitic or you hear some kind of racial slur, whatever the ethnicity, whatever the religious group, not to stand by idly as it is being said by anyone, whether it is a member of Congress or it's a friend on the street, because Hitler worked off centuries of anti-Semitism. He didn't invent anti-Semitism. He just magnificently, if you will, used it to be able to further his own political ends. So call it out. When you hear something that sounds racial, anti-Semitic, it needs to be called out, because if it's not stopped in the tracks, it builds its own momentum, and someone evil can come out and then use it.
Great advice. It's happening. I have not personally seen it. I don't mean, I'm not turning a blind eye. I just haven't seen it in my life, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. Marlene, do you guys encounter it in your daily lives in this city?
I mean, we both grew up actually Forest Hills, Queens. I was mugged a couple of times simply because of my kippah, my yarmulke. And what we've seen in New York City in the last couple of weeks, a huge amount of anti-Semitism. It's a reality.
Thank you both. To be continued. See you tomorrow.